Welcome to Keep Trucking Personal. I'm Tyler Kivi, a third-generation trucker, and my purpose is simple: to make sure the definition of trucking doesn't get lost in the culture this industry is drifting toward. This podcast is about real stories, the hard lessons, and the standards that built this business long before apps and algorithms. If you believe trucking is more than freight and its responsibility, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to Keep Trucking Personal. It's been a little while, not too long, but since we've talked about the market and given a little pulse on that and talked about Kivi Brothers and honestly just in general, I think it's time to do that again, just based after the last couple of weeks I've had. And it's not because I have all the answers or that I've figured it out. That's not the case at all, because I'll be the first to tell you that I do not have the answers. But over the last several weeks, I've had the chance to do something that I think is one of the most valuable things I can do as a leader, and that's just listen to drivers, talk with our team, meet people face to face, and something that has been completely new for me recently. And it's almost been, I think I'm on my fourth week now of going on TikTok live during the weekday. And honestly, I was not sure when I started the TikTok live what to expect. I figured maybe a handful of people would jump on, ask a couple questions, and we'd just call it a day. And I'd do that for a few days and just see if there was some momentum behind it. But that's not what happened. It wasn't low key at all. I spent hours talking with drivers from all over the country, from different companies, from our company, right? I've had several drivers rally behind me, completely different backgrounds, completely different sectors in trucking. And when I mean that, I mean like reefer and tanker and cattle hauling, things that I have not done or been around when it comes to trucking. And I've heard so much in those conversations and so many follow-up conversations and so many follow-up calls and messages and even text messages through those drivers that come from this TikTok live. And I think it's exposing something that this industry it's been missing for a long time. And it's leadership that is willing to show up. And so let me tell you what drivers are actually telling me when I go through this, because I think it matters. You're going to hear a lot of stories. I'm going to weave in a lot of the stories just in the past week, and you're going to see, and maybe you can relate to a lot of this, but I want you just to hear, and like I said, it's going to be woven into the whole thing. And so last week, maybe in the last few weeks, a couple of these conversations, I've talked to drivers from, you can about imagine the states, right? Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, Missouri, Minnesota, Kentucky, guys that are in flatbed, heavy haul drivers, OTR reefer drivers who are burned out on sitting for docks for 6 or 7 hours waiting to get loaded, local drivers who just want to be home at night and feel like a person when they show up to work in the morning. And across all of these conversations, they're all different people, and they all have different backgrounds, and they all have different situations. And I keep hearing the same thing underneath it all. They want to know their equipment is going to be taken care of. They want to know when something goes wrong, someone is actually going to pick up the phone, not an AI agent that says, pick a number and we'll call you back, right? They want people to answer their phone. They want to be treated like a professional and not a number. And they want someone above them to be honest about what is going on. And those are questions that I have been fielding and having deep conversations. And the last one, I think, gets underestimated, right? Drivers are not asking for perfection. You guys understand this industry better than anyone. They're not asking for everything to go right all the time. They know trucking does not work that way, right? We know that. We're all smart enough to know that. What they're asking for is just pure honesty. Tell me what is going on. Tell me where we stand. Do not put a recruiting ad in front of me that promises me things that you cannot fulfill or you cannot deliver. And I had a conversation recently with a driver who had been at the same small company for 3 years. And friends, she was one of the best heavy haul operators I've talked to in a long time. She's got 11 plus years with a CDL, windmill blades. She's run a steerable RGN, hundreds of permit loads. She knows her craft inside and out. And she was leaving. She was asking about a new opportunity. And I asked more. And it wasn't just because of the money. It was because someone made her a promise and broke it when it was convenient for them. And a 4-axle heavy haul driver, she had earned something and it got pulled for a coworker. And nobody called her. Nobody explained it. Nobody said, we're sorry this happened. She just showed up and that new truck was issued. That was promised to her. And this kind of thing sends a great driver out the door. And the tragedy is it had nothing to do with freight. She was being paid well, and it wasn't anything too complicated. It was just a promise that they did not keep. And that conversation stayed with me, right? It stared me right in the eyes because we all have to work at getting better on this. Sometimes it's so easy to just commit, but not follow through. And all of that, keeps resonating with me. One of the biggest things I've taken away from all these conversations from TikTok or on the phone, in person, is drivers do not just want another company. They want to know who is leading it. I had a driver call me recently, right? Another story I'm going to tell you. He had found us through TikTok. So he had the opportunity to keep scrolling, and he popped into one of my live sessions, and he had been following it for several times. It wasn't his first time popping in. And the first thing he said when I picked up and we connected was he liked the fact that he could actually see who was running the company. He said most carriers he had dealt with, you never know who was at the top. You might see a picture on their website if you're lucky, but you never know. You might know your dispatcher's name. You might know your recruiter, but the ownership, it's kind of like everyone's got an open door policy, but it was a little invisible. You couldn't find it. Where was it? Right? Where is it? He said that bothered him because when something goes wrong, and in trucking, something always goes wrong eventually, he wanted to know there was a real person above his dispatcher who actually cared about the outcome, right? Who had skin in the game. And it's not a complicated task, you guys. But I do not think our industry does a great job of answering that or showing it. And I can tell just by the feedback I'm getting through TikTok. I know how much our drivers want honesty, and they want someone who's willing to have that real conversation instead of hiding behind that recruiting ad. And so on these live streams on TikTok, drivers are asking those hard questions. And so they're asking about freight and about pay and about equipment and the market and culture and leadership. And some of the questions are easy and some of them are not. Some of them are really hard. I had a guy ask me on a live stream to explain why flatbed pays different than van, and not just a general answer. He wanted a real breakdown because he had been told different things by 3 different companies and he could not figure out who was being straight with him. And so I walked through it, tarping, stop charges, loaded versus empty, and how it all works, and accessorial pay, and the whole picture. And when I was done, he said, this is the first time anyone has ever just answered the question without trying to sell me something at the same time. And that stuck with me as well, because truth is not built through silence. It's built through conversations and being in a relationship. That's how this game works. And the more I show up and have these real conversations, the more I understand what drivers need from leadership, and they want to know who they're following. And I've always believed this. Transparency builds trust. And so if we are asking drivers to trust us with their career, their livelihood, their family's income, then we better be willing to earn that trust, and not through marketing and not through just spending money online, not through promises on a job board. Trust me, we're all guilty of this. We're all in the same boat. I've created AI images and used them. Like, it is almost too easy now to look above the market, to look professional, to look extreme, to look flashy. But it's all coming to a head because people want to know who's leading that company. They want to see real faces and have real conversations. And so showing up consistently and being visible to any driver and taking questions, whether it's for our company or not, and doing the best that I can and owning things when we've done wrong, which I've had to do several times. There's been drivers that do not work here anymore where we fumbled the ball, and I had to be honest with it. And I had to admit that we failed and be very clear about that. But I also get to be very clear about where we're headed. And I want to tell you a situation we worked on recently because I think it illustrates this. We had a customer claim come in, right? So it's not always fancy and glorious. And, I don't want to pretend like it always is. And equipment had some damage on delivery. And although this damage did not occur as a result of our driver, it was a very difficult situation, and it's shared fault through multiple parties involved, right? And so a significant dollar amount with multiple parties, that's an uncomfortable thing to deal with. And I could have let it sit. I could have handed it to someone else. I could have responded with a letter from our insurance and called it a process. Instead, I called that customer personally, and we spent nearly 40 minutes on the phone going through exactly what happened, what our internal investigation found, where we felt the fault laid, and how we wanted to make it right. And we did not agree on everything. That's where it was awkward. But by the end of the call, the customer said, I appreciate not only what you did, but the way that you handled this conversation. And that's what transparency looks like in practice. Not a perfect outcome, a real conversation between 2 people trying to do the right thing by each other. And leadership should not only exist behind a closed door, it should be accessible. And that is something I'm personally committed to, whether it's a driver, a customer, any team member. That's my commitment. And so let me talk about the market, because I know it's on everybody's mind continuously. And it's still a very competitive market. Margins are still tight. Customers keep expecting more, and companies keep fighting for more freight every single day. And none of this has really changed, right? The market has become a pro trucking market, but it's still very tight. And you have to be competitive and you have to perform, because if you don't, someone else will. And I talk to drivers all the time who are frustrated by the market. Rates may not be right where they want them to be, or miles are inconsistent with some carriers. Some companies are cutting corners to survive and expecting their drivers to absorb the consequences. I mean, I keep hearing all of this. It's so crazy. As I've become more forward facing and more accessible through any platform, I'm hearing the real truths. And another driver recently told me he was leaving his current company because they were running trucks with outdated IFTA stickers. Guys, we're 6 to 7 months past any grace period that would allow you to do that. And pressuring him to drive off duty, who is doing that? He felt like he was always being asked to put his CDL on the line every single day to keep that company afloat. And it blew my mind. It was just like, why are we still dealing with this as an industry? That's the thing about a difficult market that I don't think it's talked about enough. Hard times are going to reveal the character of a company. They're going to reveal who shows up ready to fight, who puts the gloves on every single day, whether it's glamour or you're in the trenches. And they expose the companies that are willing to cut corners, like I just talked about, when things get tight. And they also expose companies that refuse to commit and be compliant. And we're not going to ask our drivers to run illegal. We're not going to defer maintenance on equipment. We're not going to make promises we cannot keep just to get someone through orientation. I've learned the hard way on all of this. And sometimes it's so easy to agree, but it sets you up for failure. So our common theme is we're going to set you up for success. Much like anything in our company, we want success. We want to be the strongest trucking company. And there are the companies that come out the other side with drivers who trust them. And I believe we are one of them, because drivers are going to remember. They're going to remember who backed them when things got hard. And they're going to remember who picked up the phone. And they're going to remember who had an honest, truthful conversation, even when it's not what they wanted to hear. And that is where I believe we belong. That's what I think the standard that Kivi Brothers holds themselves to. And so people ask me all the time, what is next for Kivi Brothers? Whether it's just market wise or whether it's on our heavy haul side, like what is the next big item, right? And honestly, none of that really matters. The answer is really simple for us. It's work hard, surround yourself and surround ourselves with great people, take care of our drivers, take care of our customers, and get a little bit better every single day. That's the recipe, right? That's how simple it is. And I know it sounds simple because, as I think through those questions when people ask, I think they really think I'm going to land some, 60-yard pass and then they're going to blow their mind. It's not. It's that simple. And I've been in this long enough to know that companies who do those things consistently, and not just when it's easy, not just when the market is good, but every single day, those are the companies that are still standing when things get really hard. And we are a flatbed and step deck and heavy haul carrier based out of Duluth, Minnesota, with a terminal in Harrodsburg, Kentucky. We're family owned. My brothers and I, third generation, built this together. And the reason we built it the way we did is because we have been on the trucks ourselves. We know what it feels like to be out there. We know it matters and when it doesn't. And I started on trucks when I was young, and branching out from washing trucks and getting my Class A at 18 and running over the road at 21 and riding and running our pilot cars and learning how to move oversized freight from the outside before I ever got behind the wheel of a super load myself. And that's special. That background shapes how I think about every decision we make. Because when I'm sitting in a meeting thinking about a policy change, it could be a pay structure, it could be a safety, it could be any one of those arenas. And I think I can put myself in the seat and know what that driver is dealing with at 2 a.m. when something goes wrong. I know what it feels like to be far from home and need someone to pick up the phone. And that's why we call it Keep Trucking Personal. That is why I personally welcome drivers before orientation. That is why we get to know our drivers by name and not just truck number. Our mission has not changed from the beginning. And drivers and customers, they go together. It's a dance. It's a handshake. And I hear sometimes you have to choose your focus, either the other, and I don't buy it. I don't buy that. Think about it this way. The driver creates the service builds the customer relationship creates consistent freight. Consistent freight means a driver can build a life around this job instead of just surviving it. It all goes together hand in hand. It's a dance, it's a cycle. When one side wins, the other side benefits. I had a conversation recently with another driver who had been running heavy haul for 7 years. Technically, his record was perfect. 0 accidents. He knew how to manage escorts, understood his permits very well. He took safety personally. He said, I keep a clean record because I do not want accidents. And if an escort is not going to call out my turns, it's not going to come out properly, I'm going to raise hell about it. He said, at the end of the day, it's my CDL if something happens. It's my reputation. That's a driver understanding accountability. He's not just doing a job, he's protecting something. Those are the conversations I'm having. This is the stuff that's coming from my TikTok live. It's fantastic. And it keeps reinforcing how thirsty this market is for a forward-facing, visible leader that's not afraid to be in front of the people versus hiding behind a door. And that driver makes a customer trust a carrier, the way he acts, the way he was professional. That is the kind of driver that makes customer relationships stronger. And it's our job to make sure that driver has a company around him that matches that standard. And so, friends, running a trucking company is not easy. And there are days when everything goes sideways all at the same time in a driver situation, a customer issue, a market, a team member who needs support, all in the same Tuesday. It's like, and there it is. And it always comes back to the same thing. You have to ask yourself, sometimes in the middle of all of it, you ask yourself, why are we doing this? How can it be this stressful? And it comes back to another driver story that I just had here that helps me sum it up. This driver was from East Texas. He hauled super loads. And when I mean super load, not just standard 13 axle, multiple line axles, 300 plus thousand pounds, taller than most houses, no accidents, and the kind of career that you try to build by doing things the right way. And his wife had piloted oversized loads from us, and she had told him about our company, and he had watched us, and he had followed along and came alongside us through multiple different platforms. And when he finally called, he said, I just want to be with a company that treats people right and runs legal. That's all I'm looking for. That's not a complicated ask, you guys, but it means everything. And when I got to tell a driver like that, yes, this is exactly what we are about. That's why I do this day in and day out. It motivates me to help people set them up for success. And so I'm still super excited and optimistic as we've kicked off the second half of the year. It's kind of crazy to think we've almost put a month down already. And there's still going to be super hard days ahead of us. There's still going to be things we have to work through that we're going to be almost what you call a nail biter. And the market's suddenly going to become super simple, you may think, and it's not. It's going to challenge you in more ways than you can even forecast. And there's going to be things in this environment that are not going to go away overnight. But I believe we have the right people behind us, and I believe we are building the right relationships with drivers and customers. And I keep reinforcing that with what I'm hearing from our drivers. And that's what gives me confidence every day. And the TikTok conversations, I know I've said them TikTok a lot. It's not really a platform that I thought I'd be in 6 months ago. Honestly, those conversations, that transparency is just giving me more energy than I ever expected. And just being able to talk to drivers directly where they're at in the place of their job, no strings attached, right? Like the connections we have after these lives, it's crazy because it's just being honest and hearing what you're actually dealing with out there, even when you're not at Kivi Brothers. And it keeps me connected to this reality of understanding what is valuable. And so if you have not jumped into a TikTok live, I do not have a set schedule yet. I haven't landed on that, but please, you should check out my TikTok page so you can learn more about it. It's super easy. And then when I go live, maybe it'll work out. And so we'll post in the comments just a simple, my handle name, Tyler Kivi. You can search it. It's very simple. Tyler KH Kivi if you have to be technical, but either one of those would pull it up. And once again, I think it's so easy to forget, but there's so many people to thank continuously over and over and over. But you have to thank all the drivers that keep jumping into these live streams and giving me momentum. And whether it's been those hard questions and pushing back on something I said, or while you're just listening at a dock, waiting to load and just taking it in. Thanks for the Kivi Bros team that keep jumping in and committing and showing up day after day, and our recruiters and our dispatch and orientation and shop and op staff. And whoever's answering the call at 2 a.m. on that day, thank you. There's so much to be appreciative for, especially after the conversations I've been having. So if there's one thing to take away, please know our mission has not changed. We're going to keep working hard. We're going to keep surrounding ourselves with good people. We're going to keep earning the trust of our drivers and our customers, one honest conversation at a time, because that's how the strongest trucking company is built. Not one load at a time, not one big decision, but thousands and thousands of small conversations happening all the time. And so I'm super excited where we're headed, and I'm grateful you're along for the ride. Thanks for listening to Keep Trucking Personal. Stay safe out there. Appreciate you tuning in. If you got value out of this, subscribe and send it to someone who takes pride in the job. We're not just moving freight, we're shaping the culture. Catch you on the next one.